I'm very excited. Today we are going to be covering how to finish the sleeve and how to add the sleeve cuff of your Scrap Yarn hoodie. The same technique is used on the body as well, so I will be demonstrating it today on the sleeve, but you can use exactly the same technique on the hem of your hoodie and be almost finished, which is very exciting. There are key moments below if there's something specific that you're hoping to jump to or need to rewatch. And of course, all of the instructions are also available in your pattern of your Scrap Yarn hoodie. And if you are confused as to what I'm talking about, feel free to jump over to the intro video to orient yourself and learn about this fabulous project that we're working on. So let's get started. I like to say that this is the Demogorgon step of our sleeve, because if we just slip it on here, you have all these little tentacle-y guys, which reminds me of just like a Demogorgon. This is your standard sleeve, and this is what this should look like. And this is where we're going to begin. So you should have your sleeve with your diamonds attached at the end, and then you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 diamonds sticking out, unless you're doing a petite version, in which case you may have, I believe, 1 less, but check your pattern. From our earlier video on how to make the hems, we should have 6 corresponding little tapered diamonds to add in today, and then we also should have our cuff. If you're at this step and have not done your tapered diamonds yet, I'll link a direct piece here where you can just hop to that portion of the diamond section in case you missed it. And same thing for the cuff if you haven't done your ribbing yet. Today we are going to attach them both. See, look how nicely that fits. And finish this all off. So again, what you will need for this step is you will need your sleeve in Demogorgon state like this. You will need your 6 partial diamonds for the hem, your ribbing if you're going to add ribbing, and some yarn plus your 5mm hook. And then you also will need some more stitch markers in order to help with the placement. Just like all of our other seaming techniques, we're going to start by pinning these in place. And this is one of those steps that is much easier done inside out. So we're going to turn our sleeve the other way so that we can do that right sides together seaming. And one of the differences about this particular seaming piece that I think can only be done with the diamonds right before this and this is you can do it all with one piece of yarn, which is awesome. I'm actually going to double up mine for this seaming just because while I love the color of this and I want this to stay consistent, this is not the strongest yarn. So I'm going to double it up to do that. Doing a little slip knot, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to start pinning them in place so that I know where I'm going to be doing my seaming. These line up, even though they are slightly tapered, they should line up with the full length of your diamond. So what we're going to turn them so they're facing each other and using our little stitch markers, just essentially kind of pin them together. So we have our slip knot like usual. And I'm going to go in and grab this first little notch, and we're doing exactly the same seaming technique we've been doing the entire time, just a really easy slip stitch. And there is a great video on that I will link in case you have missed it to go check out how we're doing pretty much the seaming for this entire garment. We're just finding, like in every other version of this, we have our right sides together and we're finding just the little spaces between and just doing a really easy slip stitch through. So you see those nice V's on top and then a little dash on the bottom. And that shows we're doing our slip stitch properly. And it's still going to be, even though this one comes in, it should line up 1 for 1 all the way up because there are 10 rows on the second half of your main diamond and 10 rows on these, even though we tapered it in. Okay, and just like with some of the other seaming, before I go down the other side, just to secure it, I like to do just a chain of one to essentially turn it. And this side has kind of hopped out of my um, little ring there, and that is okay. So I'm just going to turn it again. It's a good gut check to be like when I want it to open, I'll want it to open like that. So I want the sides facing each other again and just hook those together. And I'm just going to keep continuing with that same bit of yarn down the other side, just seaming all of the way down. Again, with these lovely little slip stitches, you can see I'm keeping the stitches on the back side, creating this almost like a seam allowance on top here. Okay. And then once I'm ready to go to the other side, I'm just going to do my little chain. And if I turn this around, you can see how nice that looks from the front side here. Now I'm going to seam it to the other space here because you get one diamond between each pair of diamonds here. Finding the end stitch, hooking it to the little end one there. And then I'm going to go up the other side. And I'm going to take this opportunity actually to hide a couple of extra strands. Last one. So I'm going to do one little chain. And again, we have our first closed little diamond there. Time for another one. So again, we want it to be facing. So I will on the kind of midpoint there and grab the bottom of this one. Then I will hook the very top here. Voila. With those right sides facing each other. Again, I'm having the wrong side face me and having that seam allowance up. I'm going to just start seaming all the way down yet again. I want to make sure that I have these lined up so that this piece reaches the full 10 rows, which that one wasn't quite doing. So I just adjusted my lining up here. It's already looking a lot better. There we are. Last stitch ends right at the bottom. And now if we peek at the right side, you can see how they're all starting to come in and lining up just really, really nicely there. And this is actually decreasing the size of the width of the bottom of your cuff so that it gets nice and tight and comfy around your wrist. So that's what we're doing here. And we're just going to keep going. Again, you should see all of these seams here, little seam allowances, if you will. And there's nothing really fancy to do here as far as the slip stitch or the shapes or anything. The shape of your tapered diamonds will do all of the work for you to actually bring in the cuffs. You don't really need to worry about much, just lining up that 1-for-1 alignment here. I'm going to grab the top, do that. And then go in here and grab this very bottom one. When you're doing this very bottom piece, though, you want to make sure that all of these are coming to a point. So you don't want there to be a space between this last stitch. Should go both on this side and on this side as you're going through to give you that really quilt-like look. Make sure you remember, see, I didn't remember to put this in here, but this is a good reminder that this sticking out piece is not your top. This one is at the very top here. So you'll want to make sure you have those evenly lined up. Otherwise, it won't taper in, which is exactly what you're trying to do. Okay, one little chain turning here. Surprisingly, we only have one more to go. Now we're on our very last one, which will close our sleeve. Okay, and so that is what that looks like from this side here. From the inside, you have all of these things here. Let me just take it and show you from the outside what we're looking like. Look how nice that looks. So no more Demogorgon now. We almost look like we're building a flower here. Just want to bring this in a little bit, and that's why we have the cuff. But before we do the cuff, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to go around once to make sure everything's nice and closed. And what we're going to do is we're going to skip these pieces here that are, in case there's a little bit of a gap between any of the diamonds, just to make sure it's nice and closed. So if you're not doing a cuff, that might be the last thing you do, in which case, if you did want to decrease it a little bit, you absolutely can. We're going to do a little border stitch around once, which is just going to be a single crochet. So we'll start here, get all my knots sorted. I'm going to mark where I'm starting in case we don't see it later. And through every stitch here, we're just going to go through and do a single crochet all the way around. That is going to give us a nice foundation to use to join our cuff to. Or this could be your last border stitch if you don't want to add the ribbing. Skipping any extra stitches that are this neutral and going right over to this colorful portion here. Our last diamond to go across, and then the very last stitch we're just gonna do a slip into, like we were finishing around. And as you can see, we have a nice little beginning of an edge. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to get ready to attach the cuff. This is another thing that's actually much easier to do inside out. So I'm just going to turn this inside out here. So again, we're going to use our right sides together methodology. And so if the right side's in here, then I want the right side up against this. And then we should be able to find the top and the bottom of this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find the bottom, which in this case is really easy. That's where I seamed. And then I'm going to find the top here. And you can do that just by counting your stitches and divide by 2, roughly 19. And that's my midpoint on the front there. And then you're going to do the same thing with your hoodie. But the nice thing about your sleeve piece is you have all of these diamonds kind of already perfectly dividing things up for you. So if the top of my hoodie is this seam line here, it's going to be right in this top guy that I want halfway through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So right there. So that makes the bottom pretty easy to find as well. And I'm going to mark that. This is very similar again to if you were sewing, how you're going to prep everything. And then we want right sides together. So the way you'll envision this is when you turn this the right side out, this will stay facing the way it is. Looks good. So then I'm going to take these and I'm going to start hooking these together like that. And then I'm going to hook these two together. Hi, Francis. And then if you want guidelines on the sides too, you can pin those. So I'm just going to kind of fold and estimate here because it looks pretty easy to eyeball. This side, and then again on this side, so that you have kind of evenly spaced how you're going to join this together. At this point, we're going to use a technique that is known as easing, that's done in sewing, which basically means we're taking two things that don't have exactly the same diameter and we're making them fit each other. So that's why we have these 4 markers set up and we're going to stitch them together and that will make them fit together. So it may not be exactly stitch for stitch. If that bothers you, you could always count to find out exactly how many stitches you need to exactly match up and do that. I don't mind eyeballing, but I do need better stitch markers on this. So I'll start in here. And again, we're doing our bestie, the slip stitch, all the way around. But what I'm going to want to have happen here, since my stitches between the outside ring and the inside ring may not be perfect, is I might do like 2 into that one, because you want every stitch to have a friend, even if some are doubled up. It's totally fine. So that when you get to your ring marker and I take it out, you want those stitches to line up. As far as where I'm seaming directly underneath the top part of that single crochet, and then I'm seaming just in under this first row here of the ribbing. Okay. And what's nice about the ribbing is you can kind of see, okay, so that one needs to be a little bit over there. I definitely have more stitches on the outside than I do on the ribbing. That's totally fine. Still just slip stitching around. That wasn't too bad as far as lining up. So you can see also, as we're going, the outer portion of the sleeve is scrunching in to fit the size of the ribbing, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to swap out this stitch marker over here just because I noticed that since we are kind of tugging a little bit as we go, it is moving. I don't want it to, so I'm going to get a little locker guy and put that in place. And just confirming that I have everything lined up perfectly, since that did pop out. And if your ribbing feels a little bit tight as you're seaming into it, feel free to stretch it ever so gently so that you can get into those stitches a little bit easier. We're about halfway. So this is how it's looking. We're getting this nice seam on the top, and it's going to look really clean on the other side, and they're just fitting so nicely together. This is a little bit more tedious of a step, but this way of easing these two things together really does a lovely job of finishing the sleeve and making it fit really nicely. Home stretch here. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so we have this lovely little cuff in here, and we could pull it out like this, and you want the wrong side to be up. Perfect. Which means that if I just turn this the right way out, reach all the way in here, and pull it through, look at that. We have a pretty much completely hidden seam, and these little diamonds just flow so nicely into the cuff. And then if we put it on, what you will see is how nicely that fits. Isn't that fantastic? And then one of the nice things about this is it will actually blouse over the cuff rather than covering your hand. So it stays really nice and functional. But this will be up here, of course, once the body is joined. And then this is the same technique that we use on the body as well, with these smaller pieces coming together at the hem, and then our ribbing at the bottom joining together in exactly the same way. I am so excited to see the finished product. Make sure you tag me in your finished result, and if you have any questions, use the contact information below. I can't wait to see how your version turns out.